Greetings, I'm Scott Usher. I'm the creative director at Haven Light, and we are here in the studio today with Laci Gibbs Vega. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I'm so glad you're here today because we don't have the opportunity to have a lot of photographers in here with us. And you're an extraordinary photographer. One of the things that people are probably relatively unaware of about you is that there is a look and a series of photography that was done at the onset of the Chosen program that you are entirely responsible for. And I'm going to say, gosh, I didn't even know this until easily a year or two into me knowing who you are. So the Chosen reached out to you very early on to do work for them. Oh, actually. You reached out to them.
Yeah, I heard about what they were doing,
happened.
And I'm like, let's go. Let's make this happen.
How did you get this to happen?
I'm the type to put myself out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not like I think so highly of myself that I was like, well, they'll pick me. It's just like, hey, I care about the work, or I care about what you're doing. Let's do this together. Like, or
what's cool
like,
is people are going to see what we're talking about, why we're talking. So feel good about just saying, okay, yeah, I did this. But, you know, again, so you reached out to them and they said, come on down. Tell me what happened.
Well, I don't know how much of this you want to know, but at the time they had a really smaller team.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of stretched thin. And initially I was going to do season 1, but they didn't have a whole lot of time. And so I ended up following up for season 2 because I happened to find out that they're on the Goshen set in Utah. I was like, well, that's 45 minutes away. Whereas last time when I reached out, timing-wise, it just didn't line up because they needed to launch something in 2 weeks. And they didn't know me yet. And anyway, actors were here. They were in Texas. And anyway, it's like, well, I'm literally 45 minutes down the road. And it was a real honor to go on the set. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has the set where they film. Mm-hmm. But the set looks kind of like a replica of the Jerusalem Center. And I got to thinking,
everyone's pretty familiar with it.
I know,
now.
right?
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool just because it was pretty believable. And I got to scout ahead of time before everybody was there. And that was a real thrill. I would actually say photographing for them was probably one of the highlights of my life in like every way possible. It was fun socially, it was fun professionally, it was fun emotionally, spiritually, financially. Like there are a lot of, it was just a really cool experience being on set and seeing people from all walks of life contributing to the show. But
there's a look to this set of photography. I can't tell if it's night, is it indoors, you know, you came up with a look and a feel for all of these things that I'll say is really unique, and it's really special. Can you recall at all that choice? Why those choices?
Well, if you're referring to like the richness, like I feel like somebody called it a chocolate filter look where it looked very rich. Not delicious, but
it's
but
saturated.
Like
the colors are saturated. It's very contrasty. Yep, but the colors are juicy. The lighting is really awesome. But it's somber too. I mean, it's just.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and again, not to go into science, but the word photograph itself means light writing, which means you're recording light. And I think when you have contrast, like you have light and shadow, it actually gives more meaning to it. Now, if you have like a photograph that's blown out, then what's the good of it? Or if it's all dark, what's the good of it? So having like a little bit of both, where you're seeing like the highlights as well as the shadows, especially like with these incredible actors that were able to pull out these really deep emotions very quickly, like because they get into character, and so that made my job easier. I don't want to take full credit for that, but you ask them to do this, you ask them the right questions, and they pull it out of something. Like they have experience that they're pulling from, and the richness of their faces, I feel like requires that lighting because then you can see the detail in the character and their skin, even down to the wrinkles where you can see like. Maybe what they were going through during the show. But anyway, the reason I mentioned the light and the dark is because life is that way, where it's like you have both good and bad that you're comparing it to. But yeah, I didn't want it to feel all dark, like it's all wrong. But it's like, well, Jesus is the light of the world. He brought light here to a dark place, and so it's like you have both, and it's almost because of the darkness and the struggle that we deal with, then it makes his light all the more beautiful to us, if that makes sense. And so there's a particular image of Mary sitting on the steps where she's kind of in her angst, kind of in a dark, cold, like even down to the coloring where it's like kind of cold looking. Not much hope there, but he's coming down the steps and all you see is his feet. But like I intended it to be warm and bright as if he's coming down from heaven to bring us hope and redemption, which, as you know in the show, that's what she receives. And as she follows him, she receives that from him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, like I said, just the whole series of photographs, some of which nobody's seen before, which is kind of fun. They get to see something right now they haven't seen, are very unique to, I think, the feeling for what was going on with the program at the time. And like I say, they're very, I don't want to say they're cutting edge. They capture everybody really well.
Yeah, well cast.
Yeah, and the Matthew is.
Oh no.
You get his peculiarities. He gets his peculiarities, and that comes through, I think, in what's being done there as well.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out though. My normal photography style tends to be kind of a little bit slower because I'm dialing in, but knowing this was on set with a lot going on, and it was actually my first time on set. By the way, no one knows that, but it was a real honor. But I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, there's a lot going on. It's really fast paced. We don't have a whole lot of time to work with, and so I'm praying for help. And again, I bring back the muscle memory. It kicked in, where it was like I was able to work really fast.
Yep.
But I noticed a difference because when I went back to my normal shoots, I felt that slower pace kick back in. I was like, okay, I had help. Where, like, for instance, there was one shoot with Matthew by the gold door. I don't know if you'll show it or not, but we were in between filming scenes, and I just tried to maximize the time, just jumping on the opportunity, being assertive, because that's what you have to do. But I asked, how much time do we have? He was like, 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, we have 5 minutes to walk to the door, take it, and come back. But anyway, I give credit to the actors, though, because I asked them for the feeling, and they pulled it out. It's like, click, done, okay. Like, I see the shot. This is what I came here for.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So it's not like I really needed to take anymore. It's like, well, there it is. And I felt really blessed that all came together really quickly, but I definitely noticed some help in that.
You bought some really, really expensive lighting equipment with you as well, too, didn't you?
Well, just kidding. Yeah. I love my Pro Photos because they're cordless, whereas I've had other lights before where you have to have the cords, and I don't know, different lights can be finicky. But you built
this diffuser out of, like, ice cream carton or something like that.
Yeah, I was doing this portrait series where it was kind of a character prop series because initially they wanted props, but I thought, well, why not pair it with characters? Because then it'll give the prop more interest, and then it'll give the character more interest. It'll tell a story. And you could crop it where it's just their face, but I ended up taking the full, and they could do with it whatever they wanted. But I picked this. I wanted certain lighting behind the subject, but again, if you want soft lighting, you usually need a bigger light source. But I was like, well, you can't have this big umbrella behind Jesus because it'll show. And so I ended up cutting a hole out of this ice cream bucket. I'm a redneck. I've been told I'm resourceful. Just use what you have. So you could do it right, because otherwise if you had too small, it would be too harsh. Anyway, I had people walking by like, what is that? And I was like, don't worry about it, it'll work. And they ended up seeing them later, and we're pretty happy with them. But anyway, just make do with what you have sometimes. But it's funny, an ice cream bucket on a Pro Photo, like...
Yeah.
Use what you have, right?
The best guitarists use the neck of a beer bottle, on their guitars to do the slide guitar. So much like an artist, your process, if you're starting with photography on something, where do you start? How do you line through getting from all my scrap, all the pieces I've shot, scrap's the wrong term, to where I've got a single photo that I'm looking at?
I feel like, when you've done something enough times, when I was talking about dialing it in with the film, well, if you've done something enough times, it becomes muscle memory where you don't actually have to take as much in the digital. And so it depends on the project, but I usually come with something in mind. But sometimes, depending on the locations that you go, you don't actually know what precisely to expect, so you have to be a little bit flexible. So even the other day, I was doing a shoot and it was raining. I was waiting for a rainy day and waiting for a puddle, and hunting everywhere looking for the right puddle. And anyway, there's some things that are out of your control, but this one particular puddle I found, and it was right in the middle of all the traffic, and I was like, well, that wasn't ideal. And so it ended up being kind of a ridiculous shoot, me going up and back, because I had to use a tripod.
Didn't want to get hit by a car?
Yeah, and it was right in the middle of rush hour. But there's some fun surprises, too, where it's like there's a cool reflection that I wasn't expecting that added to the piece. So in some ways you have something in mind, but then also being open to anything serendipitous that can happen to make your piece better. And sometimes it's like, oh, the clouds just parted just right, and the light's coming through in a really pretty way that, again, you can't control, but like you can kind of anticipate thinking today might be a good day because it says these conditions, but you actually don't know 100%. But sometimes you scout ahead to get an idea. I don't know if that answers your question.
Like I say, just, again, I think most people think, oh, you just kind of point your camera and shoot. And, a little more planning than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with my composite, I always start with the base image because that's the part that you have the least control over. And so when you're planning ahead, you also have your subjects and your costumes in mind, but then I photograph them second because it's easier to photograph the person to composite into the shot where you know exactly where you're going to put them and what the light looks like. And making the light realistic, you kind of have to match it.
Yep.
And so you can't really work backwards because you can't. Does that make sense? Like you kind of, at least that's the way I work. Just because you have a little bit more control over your subject with how they move.
Well, one of the first pieces we saw of yours was at rock bottom.
Oh.
So, did you construct the rock bottom or the girl first? How did you come through with that?
Well, let me think. That was a while ago, and I was actually the subject, so I was my own model in that case, which is also a trick if you're the photographer and the subject. But that piece, I'm glad you brought it up. It was really personal to me. And that was all photography, and I remember, and again, sometimes you think, I need something. Where am I going to find that? And I always pray.
Yeah.
Think, okay, I need this, like this cut. So this particular image, the girl is on the bottom of a pit, but it's a cross section where you see the rock formations as well as the dirt. So it's just kind of interesting. But then there's light coming through with her rope, and I could tell you in a minute, kind of the meaning behind that if you'd like. But when you go scouting, I was looking everywhere, looking for the right rocks, and it's like, okay, there's those rocks. And then you just kind of take different samples, and then you kind of jigsaw it together where it's like, okay, this fits
I never
here.
thought that was a single location.
No, it was
But it's
multiple.
all a bunch of rocks you pulled together, yeah.
Yeah, and then as for the prayer for the dirt, I was like, where am I going to find a cross-section of dirt where it looks cut? Anyway, I was just on a walk, and you see there's a new build, and they had just cut out, like, the foundation. I'm like, there it is. So, and again, but finding the right time of day where you knew it was going to match the original lighting of the rocks that I already took.
At least you're not pulling over in the middle of the highway this time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But anywho, piecing that together and then photographing myself, knowing that the lighting was coming from a certain angle, and also knowing what lighting looks good on the human face, where you can kind of know how to position where the lighting, like the shadows, would look good, and flattering instead of just being flat. So knowing where it's coming from, but also knowing where it looks good, if that makes sense, makes it most interesting, because sometimes front lighting just blows out the detail, or it's not really that interesting to look, but I think having contrast where you're lighting a certain way creates more interest.
Yep. I think part of the photography that you're bringing, one of the things you can see for people that are just digital artists is trouble with light sources, and also even regular artists. And at least having been a photographer, you're used to the whole. You know what the whole should
Right.
look like. You recently sent in just some wonderful photography, and I have graven thee is, I think, one of the most interesting pictures that come in sepia. Tell me a little bit about, because you, like say, you're not doing one style of photography all the way through. You're jumping all over the place. Why this form and format?
Well, if you're asking about the styling, I'll get to that first and then
Yeah.
get to the content. But and I referenced muscle memory earlier. You know, when
Yeah.
you make when you're first learning, you're trying new things, right? Kind of throwing paint on a canvas. What does this do? Oh, okay, this is fun. Let's try this. What does this do? Over time, you find things that you really like,
Yeah.
and then you do it over and over, where it kind of lessens your decision. Like your, how do I explain this? Like it decreases the time you need to make good decisions. So it's like, you know, if something works really well for you and it kind of develops a style where it's recognizable that it's yours, it's because of muscle memory and you do it well
Yeah.
because you've done it so much. But I feel like lately, I think every artist hits this at some point where they want to try something new, and
I want to do
you're
a black
like, okay,
and white
like
sketch.
I'm getting bored now.
Yeah.
Like, let's try something new. And this one, I'd never done a tintype look. So
Yeah.
tintype is kind of a. I have to crack open my art history book. It's been a minute, but it's just an older style.
An antiquated.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Where like the tones are very rich, the contrast even in the texture is rich, and the edges are blurred in a way that's kind of unique. And I don't know, I'd have to study it more, like the actual science behind
But
it.
that's what the photography was
Right.
at the time, and the exposure
Right.
combination of the way the light was hitting the treated plate and the fact that the camera might have moved a little bit.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, everything counted on being still, you know.
Yeah, and, you know, they have people sitting in their chairs
With the braces.
not smiling because they can't
Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
still forever. But in this particular instance, I just thought, hey, that'd be a really cool look because I want it to feel special, like a memory you want to keep.
It's
if
intimate.
That makes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so now the straight digital image that I took, I wouldn't say was really all that interesting to me personally. It's like, I need something. And that's partially because I took it really quick because my brother was in the middle of a move and I already felt bad asking him for help. So it was actually my brother who's the model as well as my mom. But she was, the behind the scenes was she was asking for something meaningful with his hands. And I thought, well, would you like to be my model? And this particular piece ended up being more special to her because, like, I don't know, she's had a tough life and worked really hard for so long, and so I feel like it shows the character in her hands.
Yeah, tough hands. Yeah.
And but also, and I hope she's okay with me sharing this, but you know, she loves him, and I thought it was cool that it was my brother because Jesus is our brother, and and I liked his hands, like the way it looked like he was a hardworking man too. But anyway, there's something. And
It's
again,
good
she
casting.
wanted. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, it was quick, but and normally I would use my studio lights to kind of really dial it in, but I felt like it was late in the day, but I thought because there was some noise in it, they were like, well, let's make that look like grain. And it kind of just started going that way to like, let's make this feel a little bit more intimate. But anyway, the markings on his hands, I know that was kind of the main focus, but it was also about her too and her relationship with him. I was like, Mom, grab his hand like this to make it feel like can't quite think of my words, but just more endearing, more special than just hey, good to meet you.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
No, like I say, the intimacy of the piece, I'll say, gosh, I didn't even know these are the people that were doing it. But I thought it had as much to do with the style that you portrayed it in. But I'll just say, oh, wow, great casting.
Thank you.
You know, because you do get, there's just, I'm not going to hold your hand in the same way. You know, there's boundaries, there's whatever it is. And here's mother and son, and that's kind of what this is all about anyway. You know, that you're looking for that level of intimacy. So I'll say, wow, that comes across really well. And
Thank you. I appreciate
you've got to
that.
get them put together more often.
Thank you.
You are creating your artwork with a very distinct purpose, to allow people to invite Christ into their lives in a particular way. What is the purpose of hanging artwork to you? Why does somebody hang artwork like this in their home?
That's a great question. Again, with what I was just discussing with you about the busyness of life, people coming to work, coming home, eating, I got to get the kids to bed. There's just a lot going on. And I feel like, you know, especially when we find ourselves watching too much TV or scrolling, our focus is narrowed to things that maybe don't fill us as much. I'm not saying like you don't need time to decompress, but I feel like hanging art on your home kind of gives you, like when you walk by it. So I have this picture of Jesus in my hallway where every time I walk up the stairs, I see it. And so it's almost like I'm coming down, starting my day. I'm starting my day. I mean, not that I remember every single time. Sometimes you kind of blur things in the background. But when you really pay attention, like it can be kind of a source of remembrance. Like you recall him more, and then he's in your life more deliberately if you remember to stop and take pause. And so I think art can be helpful that way, especially if there's a particular piece that means something to you.
Yeah.
Like if there's something that speaks to you, then I mean, why would you buy it if it didn't mean something to you? And I don't know, people are sentimental too. Yeah. And so having things that mean something to them can bring life into their day, I suppose. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, I think that's a great answer. And I think if nothing else, you've proven that if there's the smartest person in the room, it is not me.
Oh.
So I want to thank you for coming in and seeing us today. And we look forward to having you in again. You have so much to say. You're so eloquent.
Oh, thank you.
It's been really wonderful having you here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Scott Usher. I'm the creative director at Haven Light, and this has been Haven Light Artist Spotlight with Laci Gibbs Vega.